Blue Beetle is directed by Angel Manuel Sato and stars Zolo Marduena, George Lopez, and Bruna Marquezine. I am so sorry if I butchered any of your names. An alien scarab chooses college graduate Jaime Reyes to be its host, bestowing upon him extraordinary powers as he's chased after by the evil company that wants it back. The era of the DCEU has finally ended, and let me tell you, it has been quite a ride. There have been a lot of this, a whole lot of this. But here we are, the start of a new age of DC movies and TV shows brought to us by James Gunn. The new DCU, I'm pretty sure it's being called. And here we have the first installment. I'm pretty sure James Gunn is pretty lenient about where this stands in his universe. I have been a Blue Beetle fan since I first saw him in Batman Brave and the Bold, and ever since then I have just loved how fun he was, how deep his story went, and I just loved every single time we saw him in any sort of animation. But here we are with his first ever live action installment on the big screen. And honestly, seeing all the trailers for this movie, I kind of wasn't that excited for it. None of the trailers ever grabbed me, and I thought a lot of the trailers looked pretty generic and pretty cheap. And if I'm being completely honest, the trailers and all of the advertisements sort of reminded me a lot of Power Rangers, which really threw me off and really lowered my expectations. But regardless, I sat down in the theater, watched it, and after experiencing it, I can honestly say it's solid. It really is a solid superhero film. Is it great? No, it is not. There are plenty of flaws with it, but overall, yeah. Alright, so let's just get out of the way. By far the best part about this movie, the acting. The acting from every single person in the main cast is fantastic, and they have such fantastic chemistry with each other. You truly buy the familial relationship that every single one of these characters have with each other, and it just deepens their connections, the connections that you have to the characters, more than you probably should, because to be fair, they don't have the most in-depth relationships across the span of the movie, but the acting is so good and the chemistry between the actors is so good that you really do buy every single one of their relationships. Like most people, I knew Zolo first from Cobra Kai, and just like in Cobra Kai, he knocks it out of the park here as Jaime Reyes. I could not imagine a better casting for this character, and he pulls it off. Jaime is so much fun, he has so much depth, and you really do get his plight where his family is so run down in this horrible situation that they're in that he truly does feel like he has the weight of the world on his shoulders before the scarab comes along and it allows him to have the weight of the world on his shoulders. You buy him as just this ordinary yet still intelligent kid, and Zolo plays him with such charm. But we have to talk about this man. This man right here makes the movie in terms of acting. Not only is George Lopez absolutely hilarious in this movie, and every single time he's on screen you are guaranteed a laugh, but there's also a great deal of depth to his character and his relationship with Jaime Reyes in this movie that I really did appreciate and really did add to both characters and the movie as a whole, since they're pretty much the two main characters of the film. And moving on to the Blue Beetle costume, it actually looks really good. There is a good mixture of practical costuming and visual effects to make everything involving the Blue Beetle suit itself look as realistic as its budget will allow, and even though it doesn't look the most realistic a lot of times, it looks really cool nonetheless. And when the scarab attaches itself to Jaime, not only is it brought to life with some really good prosthetic work, but the personality AI of the scarab itself is also really interesting. I was really worried that it would just be another Venom clone, but there's actually more to it than that. At first, the Scarab is extremely robotic, but as the movie progresses and as it physically bonds with Jaime more and more and more, you see it grow into more of a human presence and more of a conscience in Jaime's life, to the point where not only does it understand Jaime's personal philosophies, but it also understands his language to the point where he's fully speaking Spanish along with the Scarab. You don't see a ton of the interactions between Jaime and the Scarab throughout the film, but those little interactions that you do see that do develop the characters really do go a long way to make this film feel like it's more than just a generic superhero film. And the same can be said for the villains of the movie too. Now, don't get me wrong, at first, the villains of the movie are very generic cookie cutter cardboard cutouts that I was so ready to hate. But by the end of the movie, there is a surprising amount of depth brought to at least one of the two big bads in the movie that really does make their characters so much more intriguing than they were originally. And along with that, the action sequences in the movie are pretty cool. Now, sure, the setups for each of the action sequences are pretty generic, but not only is the blue Beetle suit and all that it can do integrated well into the action sequences, but also there is a hallway fight. You know I'm a sucker for a good old-fashioned hallway fight. So those are all the things that I really love about the movie. Now, what keeps it from being great? Well, for starters, even though the comedy hits way more than it misses, there are a fair few times where the comedy just doesn't land. And even though when the comedy hits, there is a great deal of laughter that accompanies it, but when it doesn't land, there is a noticeable silence between dialogue that really makes it awkward. Also, the effects in this movie are not very good. I really do appreciate the fact that they tried to have as much practical costuming as possible with this film, but whenever the visual effects are integrated and whenever the movie relies heavily on those effects, it does not look good. It looks very unrealistic, it looks really rubbery, and it looks completely cartoonish. But I do think the biggest problem that this movie has that really will keep a lot of people from enjoying it is just how generic the story is. This is pretty much essentially the exact same story as Iron Man, Ant-Man, Doctor Strange, and countless other superhero movies. I have seen so many people on social media compare the story in this film detail by detail with so many other superhero movies that it's kind of ridiculous. And they are right, and I would be lying if I didn't say that the formulaic story that this movie has didn't make the film feel very predictable. With that said, however, personally, I do think there is enough familial elements and a few unique aspects to this film that do add to the story rather than making it feel like a complete copy and paste of those other movies. I completely understand why many people wouldn't be able to see that way and would be distracted by how formulaic it is, but personally, there's just enough heart to this movie that I don't mind it. So yes, I would understand why people wouldn't like this movie, but to be fair, I would also understand why people really like this movie. And for my money's worth, I'm more in the camp that really did like it. The acting is great, the action is cool, the comedy hits more than it misses, and the familial aspects give the film a lot of heart and soul. However, sometimes the comedy doesn't land, the effects are pretty janky, and the movie does follow a very generic superhero formula. As the start of this new DC universe, I can honestly say, even though it's not a great film, it is still a pretty fun and solid flick. I'm going to give Blue Beetle a B. Well guys, thank you so much for watching, and let me know in the comments down below, which new DC movie or TV show within James Gunn's new universe are you most looking forward to? For me, hands down, it is Superman Legacy. The more I hear about this movie and the more I hear about the casting, the more I cannot wait, the more I think this movie is just going to be so much fun, it's going to have so much heart, and it's really going to understand why everyone truly loves and relates to Superman. Don't get me wrong, I love Man of Steel and I will miss Henry Cavill as Superman, but I am always open to a new, interesting, good interpretation of a character that I love. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are the best. And don't forget to click subscribe and click the bell icon down below to stay up to date on all things movie, all things TV, all things nerd.